1310 WIBA and Ask the Experts, joined this morning by Chartered Financial Analyst Tom Plumb. Of course, Tom comes to us from Wisconsin Capital Management. You can learn more about Tom as well as Wisconsin Capital Management all on their website, wiscap.com. That's WISCAP.com. It's a great day to start that journey and head on over to the website. You can learn more about making appointments and other things as well online, wiscap.com. That's WISCAP.com. As mentioned, joining us this morning is Tom Plumb with Wisconsin Capital Management. Tom, how you doing this week?
Oh, doing wonderful. We've got a beautiful week starting out here in Wisconsin in July. What more could we ask?
I know it's been a great year, and yeah, nice temperate weather. We will definitely take it. I know it's been a little warm for some, but we'll remind everybody in January about these, in February about these days as well. Tom, we've got as always a very full show ahead. We're going to talk about one of the big questions you get about retirement is folks asking kind of the very basic question, which is, how do I know when I can afford to retire? And we're going to talk about that and some of the other aspects that come into play with making that decision. But first and foremost, let's just real quick, as a financial planner, as a chartered financial analyst, let's talk a little bit about how you help people and a little bit for folks that have gotten to know you through this radio show and been listening to the program, a little bit about how they can get to know you a little bit better.
Well, certainly we have some information on wiscap.com. You can call us, talk to us about the individual situations. As we've said before, we got our start as security analysts and portfolio managers, and then we had a strong desire to make sure that we were applying that expertise to individual situations, and that's why in the past we've had a trust company and we've had a wealth management company, but right now we're focusing on our proprietary mutual funds and basically helping our individual clients navigate through the complexities of the market situation and basically make sure that we have the right portfolio for the right times.
Tom, do you get folks who come to you from maybe, there's obviously a variety of different options out there and other opportunities. You ever hear from folks, and I've heard this from folks sometimes, they said, I was working with somebody, but I'm not entirely sure what, if anything, they were really doing. And we talk about kind of your hands-on approach. Do you hear that from folks a lot that are coming to you saying, I want a little bit more personalized. I want to actually understand a little bit more about what my financial planner does?
I think that's a real good case, John. You think about it, when you are working with certain types of financial planners, they come up with one solution. They may be compensated by having a commission paid when they sell you that, and then they really have no more financial interest in you. We've always set up our business so that our best interests align with the client's best interests, and we think that fee-based portfolios make the most sense for doing that.
Talking this morning with Tom Plumb. He is, of course, a chartered financial analyst with Wisconsin Capital Management. You can learn more about Tom and the team all online, wiscap.com. That's WISCAP.com. If you've been asking those questions, great day to get some insight into Tom and a little bit what he has to offer and the folks at Wisconsin Capital Management. It's always a great day to start that conversation as well. And Tom, this week we're going to be talking about when folks can afford to retire. And I remember the movie Austin Powers when it first came out. And Dr. Evil is threatening everybody, and he says basically holding world ransom for $1 million. And of course, he's been held frozen in time for a couple of decades. Everyone looks at him like $1 million. That's not a lot. And you were telling me about a recent article you read about kind of how perspectives and priorities and understanding of what, quote unquote, folks consider to be rich and how much that has changed over the years, hasn't it?
Oh, definitely, Sean. When you think about it, I'm of the generation where $1 million was a real significant goal to help finance your retirement. Articles recently are indicating that people don't consider other people rich or themselves rich until they have an investable net worth of about $2.3 million. If you have a net worth of $1 million, that's very significant, very good. But if a significant portion of that is your home, it's really not an asset that's going to be supporting you in the future.
So let's kind of get to the basics then, Tom, for folks that are saying, okay, we look to what type of investment net worth, which folks consider to be rich. How do you kind of get to the basics and kind of figure out what kind of money you're going to need to have saved for a comfortable retirement?
Well, I think, Sean, the main thing, people have different expense levels. They have different lifestyles. They have different goals, needs. And I think you have to establish what those are and take a realistic, honest approach to what the costs are going to be for your lifestyle in the near future. And also understand that those current expectations, goals will change as you hit your retirement ages. The Social Security Department tells us that once you turn 65, if you're a male, your life expectancy is to last till 85. And if you're a female, on average, life expectancy is 87. But if you're a couple and you both are 65, there's over a 50% chance that one of you will live to 90. So you have some long-term planning, and that time will change dramatically as you're in your retirement. Your financial plan has to take into consideration how those goals will evolve over that time.
Well, and Tom, I've got to ask then, as we look at that, I got to guess a huge fear for folks is that running out. How do you determine that? Is there a rule of thumb, or what should people be focusing in on there?
Oh, there are rules of thumb, Sean,
Okay.
and they're worth they're basically worth being a good starting point.
Okay.
They change based on a lot of factors, including your personal health, longevity that you might expect. And one of the best characteristics to look at is how long your parents lived. But it still has to deal with a lot of uncertainty because you may under or overlive the averages or the life expectancy. But the rule of thumb that a lot of people have applied, starting with, is that if they could earn 4% beginning of time of their retirement, you could adjust that for inflation. And historically, that's covered about 75% of the time to making sure that you didn't run out of money. So again, you have to start with the basics. What are my expenses? Because my housing expense, my food expense, my insurance, all those things don't disappear just because you retire.
How about taxes? Do those finally go away, Tom?
Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it, Sean? Actually, the big bill does have some tax benefits for those on fixed income in retirement.
Great.
They phase out after a certain amount of income, but taxes are going to be a part of it, especially if you're withdrawing some of the funds necessary to live on from retirement plans or from annuities and things like that. You're actually going to have to make sure that you incorporate that tax liability in your planning, because a big number can become a less big number once you take that tax effect.
That is for sure. Talking this morning with Tom Plumb, Chartered Financial Analyst with Wisconsin Capital Management. Their website, wiscap.com. That's WISCAP.com. If you've got questions about Tom, you want to get to know him, learn a little bit more about Wisconsin Capital Management, the website, wiscap.com, is a great starting point for you as you head into the office this morning. Take note, WISCAP.com. Check that out when you get in. Maybe you've got the day off this morning. Head on over there right now. I know we've all got those smartphones. Put that internet right in your hand. Again, that website, wiscap.com. And before we talk about some of the other aspects of the financial picture there, Tom, you mentioned something about looking to your family. Is that something that folks should be considering? Is looking at their parents and kind of how long they were with us as kind of like a good guide for kind of project our life expectancy?
It's a guide,
Okay.
Sean, and it is important. It's actually probably has the highest correlation, but that doesn't mean it's going to be foolproof in any means. But I think that it is a good place to start, and looking at your own health situation. Obviously, by the time you're approaching retirement, you may have dealt with some health problems. You may not, but at the same time, you have to have a practical viewpoint on where to start. And then you take and adjust that for the black swan events of dying sooner, living longer.
I want to ask you about sources of income in just a minute, but one of the things too you also had mentioned, you think about lifestyle, our lifestyles and trying to figure out what our expenses will be. I think of where a lot of us start is when moving through real estate. We start with a starter home, and maybe as our family grows, we look to expand our home, more bedrooms, more space. Especially you've got kids; they're a bit rambunctious, have a place to escape. Maybe got a weekend home. Is that one of those areas as well that folks might want to analyze as far as places that there may be potential for equity, or areas that may be able to say, maybe looking to downsize a home, or maybe moving from the property on the isthmus, looking towards one of the surrounding counties, especially now that we're not commuting to work? Are those some of those areas where there might be some opportunity to reduce expenses and maybe add a little bit more to that overall net worth?
Sean, for a long time, for people who are currently in retirement anyway, their real estate was looked at one of their most important investments.
Mm-hmm.
And often there was a feeling that when I'm ready, I will downsize and I'll get to something that's less maintenance, for example. And I've had a number of clients who have lived out in beautiful homes out in the country and thought, at some point in time, I'm going to take this equity I've built up and I'm going to move to a house that's less maintenance, smaller, and in the city and more convenient to healthcare, shopping, etc. And they've been surprised because the costs of moving into town, if you will, maybe are not as much of a savings as you would have thought. And their houses, for example, they may end up buying a house with a lot less space and a lot less amenities in town, and basically have basically something that was just an even push between the real estate that they'd had for all these years. So again, it depends. You can obviously move to apartments or assisted living, but those things have to come into the financial projections then. What is it actually going to cost? And will I really have an equity buildup that I can apply to my daily living in the future?
It's an interesting perspective as we talked this morning with Tom Plumb. Of course, Tom is with Wisconsin Capital Management. You can learn more about Tom and the team. The website, of course, wizcap.com. Real easy to remember, wizcap.com. That's WISCAP.com. We're going to continue our conversation with Tom as we talk a little bit more about retirement planning. We'll talk about sources of income, where that money, that financial picture, where things come from when it comes to retirement, and things that may seem kind of simple, Social Security, the complexities of it. And of course, we're probably just going to scratch the surface this week, probably get way more in depth into things like Social Security and other things on future programs. But we're going to get into those sources of income with Tom. We'll do that next. In the meantime, if you haven't had a chance to check out the website, head on over to wizcap.com. That's WISCAP.com. You can learn more about Tom and the whole team over at Wisconsin Capital Management. Again, that website, wizcap.com. More of Ask the Experts with Wisconsin Capital Management comes your way next right here on 1310 WIBA. 1310 WIBA and Ask the Experts, talking this morning with Tom Plumb with Wisconsin Capital Management. Of course, Tom is a chartered financial analyst. We'll talk a little bit about that designation, what that means a little bit later on in the program. Don't forget, though, if you want to learn now, you can always head on over to wizcap.com. That's WISCAP.com. Talking this week a little bit about retirement planning and some of the things that folks need to think about when it comes to putting that plan together. And obviously a big part of this, Tom, is sources of income, and Social Security is a big one. As mentioned, we're probably going to go into an entire show or two on this very specific topic, but just kind of a broad overview, what role does Social Security play in planning for people's retirement?
Well, Social Security can be a very important part, and having a specific strategy, if you haven't started to take your required distributions from Social Security, there are many different strategies on when to take it, how to take it, and your personal financial situation really comes in, as well as your health and your tax situation. But if you think about it, you can acquire or take Social Security basically starting at age 62, and you are required to start by the time you're 70. Every year that you defer taking, you miss a year of payments, but the payments that you receive go up about 8%. So you can start at your required, or the uh, full retirement benefit. And if you look at that number, and for people who haven't retired yet, it's probably around 67 years old. It's moved up to 66.8 to 67 in the next year or so. But at that point, that full benefit, which you can calculate and the IRS tables can give you, you can see that if I take it at 62, for example, I get about 70% of that number. If I take it at 70, I get 124%. So you can look at what you expect your life expectancy to be. There's no guarantees, of course, but I give you an idea of whether or not there's a trade-off that's good for you in deferring when you take Social Security. But as you said, this is a whole program in itself, because there's so many strategies, especially if you've been married, if you have been married for 10 years and divorced, if your other income, what sources that come in there. So we'll talk about that more in the future, as we'll talk about how your asset allocation should change or be reviewed as you're approaching retirement and then after you've hit retirement.
You know, Tom, another one of those areas I think a lot of folks think is maybe overly simplified and can have pretty significant complications if done wrong. And I know here in the state's capital, we do have a number of folks that have work for government agencies that offer pensions, or work for some of those other companies that may have pensions. Pensions is another one of those areas. It can be quite complicated. It's a great benefit if you have one, but you don't want to just assume that it's a real simple thing. That's an important decision to be making when it comes to choosing how you're going to handle that in retirement, isn't it?
Yeah, and when we talk about pensions, again, it's an annuity where you're going to receive a fixed amount every month. So in some aspects, it makes your planning a little bit easier, knowing I could get a specific Social Security benefit, a specific pension benefit. But for most of us, though, who didn't work for the government or a large corporation, you have more of that put on your own shoulders, where you're basically going to look at your personal savings in your IRAs, your Roth IRAs, and basically any other savings that you have, and look at that as your source of income. And that income then is going to be very significant determinant about what your lifestyle is going to be at the end. That's why we've told people for a long period of time, and we talked about this on this show, Sean, that you need to get that compounding effect on your own personal savings, because your responsibilities have grown in managing your retirement assets as we become less and less dependent or have less availability of these annuity type pensions.
Tom, what about folks, kind of, I think probably the most common, we think of, personal savings, having the 401k or the IRA and those type of things. Let's talk a little bit about where the role that those play. And of course, there are obviously, we were talking earlier about things like taxes and other things. There are a lot of strategies that go into managing these different types of accounts. And there's also great advantages if done properly, aren't there?
Oh, definitely. And we've told people for a long, long time, if your company offers a match program, take that free money, because that's very important for building up the base. Because again, the compounding depends on when you start, how much money goes in, and what your rate of return is. So when we look at these different things, remember, if you have a 401k or an IRA, we have to take into consideration that taking money out of those is a taxable event. So if you look at it, and if you had $500,000 in your IRA and you thought, okay, I can take 4% out a year, that's $20,000. Remember, that's a taxable event. Now, a Roth IRA is not taxable when you take the money out in retirement. And so there's tax considerations for how you take money, when you take money from your different sources is very important for your financial security.
Talking this morning with Tom Plumb. Of course, Tom comes to us from Wisconsin Capital Management. Their website, wiscap.com. That's WISCAP.com. Hope you get a chance this morning to stop by, check them out, learn more about Tom and the team, his son Nathan as well. Again, that website, wiscap.com. And Tom, as we kind of talk a little bit about different savings opportunities and different areas where folks may be looking to when it comes to assets, what about the distribution and starting to find ways to feel confident to say, you know what, as I've built this nest egg, now I want to withdraw from it. How can I do that without running out of money and feel safe and secure?
Well, again, we use history as a guide, and
Mm-hmm.
history is only a guide. It's not something that it guarantees. But when we look at historical times and we say, how long is this money going to need to last? We can lay some probabilities out at different withdrawal rates. We have historically what has been safe, and again, it's dependent on how long. When you start looking at your numbers when you're 65, remember, you may be talking about a 25-year time frame or even longer. For a lot of us, we're starting to see people lasting over 100 years. So it's very important to look at what history has done as a guide and what type of what we call sustainable withdrawals is reasonable given that. And expecting that you can take a significant amount of money out of your retirement plan at the beginning means that you won't have that money for the compounding effect in the future. So it's very important that you look at that. Historically, people throw in as this rule of thumb, as we've said, 4%. That's not a bad place to start.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it depends on how your money's invested and where you are in the cycle. And you need to work with someone who is a good quality financial planner who can go through what these different scenarios mean to you personally.
Tom, I've got to ask too. For folks, I know obviously as people are a few years out of retirement, that's probably a time where you're hearing from a lot of folks for the first time. But it's never too early for folks to start this conversation, is it?
Oh no, definitely, Sean. There's an old saying. I think John Elway used to tell all the beginning rookie football players that he would meet with, "Don't ever give up what you want most in life for what you want most this moment." So you need to balance that and think about the quality of life that you would like to have as you're in retirement. And that means that you have to set some plans in motion to get there, because a lot of us are not going to win the lottery. And a lot of us are going to have to take on these plans ourselves, because the corporate America no longer takes care of you with pensions, and in many cases, even there's Social Security. I think the average right now is about $1,200 a month, but some people are getting more, some people are getting less. But you need to understand that these things were probably not going to be enough to sustain a quality of life for you in retirement.
Really important day to start that conversation, start putting that plan together, regardless of where you are. It's a great day to learn more about Wisconsin Capital Management and Tom Plumb and the whole team. The website, wiscap.com. That's WISCAP.com. And again, the website, wiscap.com. Tom, always insightful. Thank you so much for your great information. You have a fantastic day.
Well, thank you, Sean, and you too. And I hope everyone listening to us does.
That's great to hear from you. As always, Tom Plumb, Wisconsin Capital Management, that website, wiscap.com. News comes your way next right here on 1310